Boom. Okay. So, all right, sweet. Recording is started, and guess we'll get into this in a bit, and right now. So before we before we start, has everyone joined this up here? So go to mentimeter.com and use this code. Has everyone done that? Everyone join? Everyone good?
Yeah.
Oh, sweet. All right. So we got a little heart. Come on, click the hearts. Okay, I got to know who joined. Okay, so I just got to click that heart right there. All right. You should be able to have a heart. Okay, sweet. We got a few people. Okay, 3 people. There's a total of quite a few more of us in here. So if hey, all right, another person. All right. I think one more person. One more. And then we'll start. Come on, let's get that heart. And y'all have fun with it. Seriously, you can totally spam it if y'all want to. So totally spam that. Have some fun. All right. It's supposed to be see, there you go. See, hey, somebody's doing it. That's what I'm talking about. That's dope. All right, look at that. See, it's fun. I like it. And in fact, I'm able to move. I guess I'm not able to move my video to the other side. But okay. Well, so starting off, everyone, today, we're going to be talking about promises in JavaScript. All right. Now, to start things off, how many of you know what promises are? What are promises? Anyone here? Yes, no, somewhat. Do y'all know what it is? Yeah, all right. Well, okay. All right. Okay. Sweet. 2 people on yes. All right. If you don't know, it's okay. Don't worry. I don't I don't think I can see who answered directly and all that stuff. I just know the results. So okay, so all 3 of us. Okay. Any no's here? Any somewhats? Yeah, all right. Okay. There. All right. That's cool. That's cool. So yes. All right. So as I said, for the individual, as I said, if you don't know promises, perfectly okay. All right. No worries. All right. So for everyone who did state that they know what promises are, what are they? And y'all, I gotta come on, type something in. Y'all gotta let me know what exactly are they? If y'all can let everyone here know. Let's see what these responses are. I'll let y'all type that real quick. So y'all totally have to type stuff in and press submit. So even if you're wrong, it's perfectly okay. You can say that you thought it was, I don't know, fudge pudding. Who knows? All right. If you don't know what promises are, if you just go ahead and state it, all right, type it in the sentence and submit it. Perfectly fine. Again, no one's gonna see your responses. As I said, I only see the results or whatever. So I actually don't know who submits them and everything like that. So don't worry at all. So just go ahead and submit something. Okay. So we'll give you a moment. Oh, okay. Okay, so one person said the eventual completion of an asynchronous operation, use them with most API calls. One person says promises are a tool that helps execute sequential code while working with async code, plus error handling. Okay, and that's a good one too. All right, code that you can run that will wait for a response to run more code or an error. Okay, all right, see, I'm liking some of these responses. It's nice, that's nice. Okay, and I see we have a couple more people join. All right, or someone else joined. So for the individual that joined, as you can see this presentation, what I want you to do is go to www.menti.com and use this code right here and follow along with us, okay? So we're having some fun and just trying to get some responses here, okay? So just as a recap, about a few of us said yes. One of us was like, no, don't really know what it is. That's no big deal. We got a couple responses. Next up, now just out of curiosity, what exactly are promises used for? Does anyone here know? And just start typing them out. I probably should have left this to be unlimited, so I probably should have did that, but I think you may only get one response. We'll see. But just yeah, what exactly are promises used for? Where do you use them? Hey, all right, server calls. HTTP request. Okay, yeah, server calls, HTTP request. All right, what else? Anyone? As I said, just type them down. As I said, so just type them out, submit them. It can be the same thing. Things like API calls. Just flow it out there. All right. Okay, we got a couple responses. Let's see if we can get a couple more, or at least one or two more. All right. Come on, we just get one more. Well, uh, uh. All right. You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna go to the next one. Okay. Oh, okay. Hey, we got something else. Okay, asynchronous behavior. All right, awesome. Okay, so promises are used for asynchronous behavior. Awesome. And that's exactly what it is. You all touched on like really interesting use cases, which we'll actually get onto, and we'll actually start using for this little, this little project that we're going to build out. Okay, but essentially, a promise is an object representing the, eventually an eventual completion of a failure or an asynchronous operation. So you're probably like, all right, Austin, you totally got this off of MDM, which I did. What exactly does this mean? Okay, so exactly promises are really interesting. Okay, and in fact, as we go to this next photo, promises are used for as I said, what I've used them for is for asynchronous like loading, like let's say for asynchronous like data fetching. All right, now we can use it also for um, we'll get into like async await and everything like that. But promises are essentially used for loading asynchronous things or making or doing asynchronous stuff. So for example, okay, we have an application. All right. Let's say, for example, we want to fetch data, or we want to, let's say we fetch data from source one, source two, and source three. All right. So let's say source one is the Pokemon API, which we will be using. Source number two would be the GitHub API, and source number three can be some sort of like collective, I don't know, some operation or whatever we want. Okay. Um, as I said, primarily, I know I use it for API calls, but you can use it for a plethora of other things. For example, synchronous data loads. It's like, synchronous data loads like step by step. So in other words, we can't move on to, let's say, the GitHub API for wanting to make that call until we get finished, as it's fetching it and getting a response from this Pokemon API that we get, right? And then we're like, all right, cool, hey, this is done. Now we can move on to this, right? And then now that this operation is done, which is, let's say, the GitHub API, now we can do something else, right? Which could, take both these calls, we could, merge it, I don't know, do some sort of correlation or make hey, every user of this project is now a Pokemon. I don't know, something like that, right? Some fun stuff. But asynchronous data, and specifically asynchronous, works in a different way, right? So the cool part about this is while your application is busy, you can say, hey, you know what? We'll go out and just get some data, right? And then after you do that, right? After then when you go out and get some data, right? Let's go and try to do something else. So we can do a lot of different operations at once. All right. So it's kind of like going. Let's say we have our application, which is it's like a straight line, right? We say, hey, you know what? Hey, we want to go fetch data. Instead of having to wait for that data to be retrieved, and then we do something, we can still do some other stuff while we're going out. And let's say, as I said, boop, go out, continue doing what we need to do. And then whenever we get, a response or whatever, we're able to do whatever we want to do with that data. Okay. And that's sort of what asynchronous is. All right. And we use a lot. We use it a lot. As in your development career, I'm sure everything from fetching APIs, and that's honestly, or using it for HTTP requests. We use it a lot. All right, primarily for those reasons. To be honest with you, that's kind of what I use promises for. More often than not, like 7 out of 10 times. um, but yeah, that's, as I said, that's kind of like that's kind of the premise of what a promise does, and what what it's able to do. And so with that being stated, what we'll do now is that now that we've sort of just gotten a really rough overview of what promises are, I like being practical with it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and build out a very simple project using promises. And then also afterwards, what we'll do is that we'll also go over the whole like async and await. It's a newer way, and in fact, I use it very often, and I can show you in one of my applications as well if you're also interested. But we'll go over like using something like, let's say, the fetch API. If you aren't familiar with that, we can look that up to fetch data and also display that data. So we'll start off with that. So the first thing we need to do is let's go ahead. And before I start, are there any questions? Any? Yes, no, maybe so. Anyone have any questions at all? I take silence as no one having questions. So if you do have questions, forever hold your peace, or just interrupt me in the middle of, just me talking. So, you know. So, all right. So what we'll do now is I want everyone to come here, or better yet, go to this URL right here. Okay. So inside our freeCodeCamp Dallas org, I want y'all to go to the JavaScript projects. Now, you take a look at this. It should be the very first one at the top. And if you don't have this, what we'll do, and in fact, you can honestly keep this base URL, and then bookmark it, or whatever you want to do. You can bookmark that and work from this. But what we'll do now is we're going to go inside our JavaScript projects. We're going to click that, and you can either download this like as a zip and extract it, or you can go ahead and do like a clone. So anyone here familiar with git commands? We can go ahead and clone the repository. All right. So we're able to do just that. Now, I've already cloned the repository. In fact, here, let me go ahead and let's see here. I put that inside. Give me one moment. Let me see real quick. GitHub, and so I do have a folder. This is like my other GitHub folder. I have like the other one's like really large, and I had to just create a different folder to size, just to make things a little bit clearer. But I have a freeCodeCamps projects folder, and inside that, this is where I clone and store all the repositories in relation to like anything freeCodeCamp Dallas related. Okay. So what we'll do is, as I said, I've already done it, but I'll go ahead and just show you how it's done if you want to actually use the terminal to clone something. And hopefully you have git bash for Windows or the Linux shell. I want to say, yeah. So I have git bash. So what we'll do is that we will open it up in the directory that we would like to clone it at, or clone it into, and we would do git clone, and then we would take this URL and we would go ahead and paste it. Okay, and when you press enter, the project should pop up in here. Okay. So is everyone following me? How are we doing so far? Are there any questions?
And if you guys don't have Git, you could probably like get a download link and just do it that way.
Yeah.
But hopefully you guys are pursuing Git, trying to learn it, so because that's a critical job skill.
It is indeed. It is indeed. And for everyone that doesn't have Git, now if you have I think a Mac, you should just be able to do like a Git clone, right? And I think it'll just automatically install the command line tool or something like that. I can't remember. I have a Mac for work, but I kind of configured that a while ago, so I can't remember off the top of my head. And I'm using Windows right now, as you can see. But if you do have a Windows machine, you could do Git for Windows. I think there's also like GitHub Desktop. So as I said, I use Git for Windows, and that's this right here. I think it's this one. And you can download it. Very easy to set up. Shouldn't have any problems. And yeah, should be perfectly fine. And then there's also I think GitHub Desktop or something like that for. You can also download like GitHub Desktop and work with like a more like UI-driven way to download and use your project. So GitHub Desktop works very well. All right. So what we'll do now is we are going to go ahead and open up this project. And I've already had this opened up. Now, just out of when you open up this project, what you will see is you will see a finished folder and a start folder. Now, everyone go to the start folder. All right. And we're going to go over a couple things. Just a small overview. Oh, I put promises. Has everyone following me so far? How's everyone doing? Everyone all right?
Is this what is this, CodePen, or is this something? Can I open it in the CodePen or anything else?
So I'm using Visual Studio Code.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah. So for all the individuals who, as I said, you can use Sublime Text. You can use whatever text editor you like. I'm going to paste. I'm going to go ahead and paste Visual Studio Code. There's also a nice text editor. Um, Sublime Text is really nice. That's something I use for like the absolute longest time. It's a very quick download, install, get going, and highly configurable, just like VS Code. I personally like VS Code a lot more. That's just me. I use that at my job, and that's something I'm just comfortable and familiar with. I also have used WebStorm if you have that, but I don't really think that's like. I mean, although it's really nice, I think it's also in some situations, in my opinion, like an overkill, and not necessary. I only use that during like I think big refactors if I'm ever facilitating that at work, or if I have to do something. But yeah, Sublime Text or Visual Studio Code. I happen to use Visual Studio Code. I recommend it. I promise you, I'm like, this is not a paid ad for Microsoft. It's free. Okay, it's free. It is something I enjoy doing. So yeah, so go ahead and download that. If you can't download it, you could use CodePen, I want to say. I mean, you can use CodePen, and you can open up in CodePen. Code Sandbox is something that you can also use. So yeah. So onto this, just to make sure, is everyone inside your start folder? Are we all here? If not, it's totally recorded, so you can just follow along and watch if you need to.
I'm there.
Awesome. All right. Now, next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna do an npm install, and we're just gonna go ahead and install all the packages that we have for this project. Okay. That'll allow it. I've already installed it, so as you can see, yeah, that's all situated. All that we have for this project is we're just going to be using something called Parcel, just to boot up and create a really simple server. I don't want to get a whole Webpack configuration and all that. Parcel is very simple and easy to use, and yeah, something I've recently been introduced to. I've known for a while, but started using recently this year. But it's very simple, easy to work with, and I started using it. And I was first introduced to it, I think, using it via for like React, and it was really dope, very easy to set up. But yeah, so what we'll do now is if we just run something, so if we look at our package.json, we have a dev command, right? So we can do a npm run dev, and it will start up a developer server. So after we've installed this, it will start up a developer server on localhost 1234. All right. So as I said, we'll be able to work from there, and as I said, I'll shift back and forth, and we'll have some fun with it. Now, what I am in right now is the finish folder. I didn't realize that, but I'm going to go inside the start folder and do an npm run dev. Okay. So as you can see, a cache, a dist folder, and your node modules folder, all this stuff has now been like generated. Well, let's see here. Oh, and you know what? Correction. Index.html needs to be pointed to. So that's another one. I'll commit that, and I'll fix that. Let's cancel it and let's run it again. So parcel, we're gonna, and then we are going to, and now our local host is up. Now all you see is like a blank line tag and li. So as you can see right here, this is all we really have. We want to populate this. Okay. In fact, we're gonna do some interesting stuff, and we're gonna use, as I said, we're gonna be using the fetch API, right? To fetch data. So before we get into this, just to sort of get like a a better representation of what promises are, we're going to be using something called fetch. Now, anyone here familiar with like the fetch API?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
sweet. Well, yeah. So long story short, all that fetch is fetch is a method, or it's fetch is a native it's a browser native JavaScript method. I want to say it's a browser native. I don't think it's like JavaScript native or whatever. But you're able to. Long story short, what you're able to do is that you're able to, use the fetch API, this method to, and it takes an argument, right? And it's that argument that it'll take is a resource or a path to the resource that we want to use, right? So, and what it'll do is that it'll return a promise that resolves to the response to like that specific request. So that was a whole lot to deal with, or a whole lot to really just say. What does that exactly look like? And let's sort of get into this a bit, okay? So what we'll do is let's go and highlight a couple of key objectives with this, right? Long story short, as you can see here, is that we want to go ahead and fetch data from our Pokey API, right? After we fetch data from our Pokey API, what we want to do is that we're going to want to display some data, right? So what exactly what is that data that we're going to want to display? Okay, and in fact, before I do this, pop this up. Boom. All right. So what exactly is that data that we're going to want to display? All right. That data that we want to display, that's not exactly just some data. We want to display the stats, right? So that Pokemon's stats display Pokemon stats data. Okay. And what we'll do with that data is that we will then let's see here, or fetch. Then we will display the stats data in a list format. Okay. So just for clarification, if you all are wondering, Austin, what exactly does that look like? All right. Now we're going to build as I said, this is very non-trivial. This is something really simple. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up, and I'm going to show y'all what exactly we're going to be doing. So something really simple, Pokestats, this. But over the course of this, what we will do is we will go over, as I said, how how promises work, what exactly is happening. We'll dive a little bit further in relation to how the fetch API is using promises. Okay, using the promise object. All right.
Hey, Austin.
Yeah.
On your I'm sorry, I got a quick question. On your package.json, you switched the dev script to parcel index.html.
Yes,
Is that right?
correct. Yeah, so it's parcel index.html. So sorry
And
about
then
that.
and then it was npm dev
Yeah,
to start
or
developing
yeah,
server.
I do npm or run dev. I think npm
Okay,
dev
run
should
dev.
work. I use Yarn mostly, but I know that everyone really doesn't have Yarn installed. So yeah, but npm run dev, and that will run this script command that we have. Okay.
Okay, I think that's working.
Yes. Okay. All right. And so if you want to test it to make sure whether it's working or not, just go ahead, and what we'll do is that we'll create an H1. You can do an H1. And as I said, follow that localhost right there. But let's create an H1, and we'll just call it Pokestats. All right. So boom. And then when you save it, it'll auto refresh, and it should render Pokestats. So is everyone seeing that? Okay. Everyone good?
Yep.
Sweet. All right. Awesome. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and make a, as I said, we're going to go and do a couple things. So for one, we're going to eliminate this li. I just wanted to show you that we want to render a list. But what we're going to do here is that we're going to bring this li, bring that to one line. Okay. And then after that, what we're going to do is that we're going to create a class called Pokestats. And we're going to save this. And now we have an H1, as as I said, that heading that says Pokestats, and then we have an unordered list that has the class Pokestats, right? Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and, as I said, we want to go ahead and render again. What we wanted to do was render all their stat data into a list format. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to use the fetch API, and before we're going to make a call here from the Poke API. Now, can everyone see this? How does it look? Can everyone see that? Awesome. We're just going to use a direct link to the results, and we're gonna, let's say, as I said, this, for example, we're gonna use the ditto, right? Now, I do have some challenges for everyone after we, after like we're done with all of this, that you'll have to do on your own, and it'd be dope if y'all can demo that next week or something like that, if y'all do that throughout the week, because I'd love to see how y'all do this. But long story short, we're going to fetch this data right here, okay? And this is what it's going to return as an object, and it'll return all sorts of data, which is this. Now I'm using an extension called, I think, Prettier JSON, or I'm actually using JSON formatter. I was going to say Prettier JSON. No, it's just a JSON formatter to get it like this. But usually the raw, what you might see is something like this, which looks a little bit more uglier, right? So there's a Chrome extension called JSON Prettier that I'm using that allows me to be able to see it in a more beautiful and like parsed format. Okay. But long story short, what we'll do is inside this Pokey API, and I'll copy this inside the chat if you all haven't had it, or if you don't see it. We're going to go ahead and call, well, you can use this as well, and we're going to use the fetch API, which is, boom. I always like, reference it. How about using fetch? Oh. To, as I said, directly go to our URL, and then we're going to make sure it's in a JSON format, and then we will log that data, okay? So what we'll do now is, so as I said, the first step that we wanted to do is we wanted to fetch the data. So fetch, so we're going to use fetch, and this is the path to where we want to retrieve that resource, okay? So what are we fetching? And we're fetching data from the Pokey API, and more specific, we're getting data that relates to the Pokemon Ditto. And anyone here play Pokemon before? If you haven't, you like totally did not have a childhood. No, but and I'm a little bit hurt that you like haven't played it, so you have to, be a little bit hurt, okay? And so, as I said, we're gonna fetch data from this, right? Well, then after we fetch this data, let's see if we get a response, right? So let's go ahead and take this response, and we want to take our response, and does anyone here know what the .json does? Anyone here know what that does?
It returns a JSON formatted, so you can put like an object in there, and it'll turn it into a JSON response.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
or wait, serialize.
Huh? Sorry, what are you saying? You sound a little bit muffly. What'd you say?
Either serializing or deserializing.
Yeah, as I said, so the JSON method, it usually, I usually use it within like some sort of like response essentially, and it returns a it pretty much like it pretty much parses the body text as JSON. So yeah, so that's pretty much what it's doing. So it's parsing all of this, like whatever's in our it's parsing it as JSON. So then after that, what we're going to want to do now is as I said, so what we're going to want to do now is we're going to want to go ahead and say, hey, after we like parse it as JSON, we want to take that data. Now we could call it response as well. I call it data because sometimes I get confused. I want to say, hey, you know what? We have this data here. Let's go ahead and log this data that we get, right? Now that that data that's been parsed into JSON, console.log. Let's go ahead and log it, right? And let's go ahead and see what that looks like. So what we'll do now is that we're going to fetch this, and we're going to see what we get. Okay, and let's go ahead and go back here, and let's crack open our developer tools. Now, for anyone who doesn't know how to open their developer tools, you can right-click, and you can click the Inspect button. Now, if you like short keys or whatnot, I think for Windows it's Control-Shift-I, and for Mac, I think it's like Command-Shift-I. I want to say, I think so. Let's take a look at that. I don't have my Mac in front of me. But you see here is that, here, let me go ahead and, I'm getting all this stuff from my MetaMask. Sorry, let me do this in a incognito window. There we go. Okay. So what we're getting here is we're getting an object, right? And as you can see, as we open up this object, we get everything from abilities. We get like, Forms, we're able to see a whole lot. Like, what are the different types of forms Ditto has? Abilities as well. And if we, take a look at this, we're able to see like, oh, wow, the first ability, as you can see, this is an array. Abilities is an array. And we're able to see like, oh, well, we're able to, it has limber and then also imposter. That's cool, right? It also has its different types of forms. It has the game indices. So I'm, like what games does it pop up in? It pops up in Pokemon Red. Pops up in let's go to this one, Sapphire. I think it pops up in Leaf Green too. Emerald. Pokemon White, Pokemon Black 2, and then White 2, all this different stuff, right? So we're able to, Leaf Green, my favorite one out of all of them, okay? Held items, everything to move, so we can, look at like all the different moves they have, species, like what species it belongs to, and even the stats. Now this is where we get into the meat potatoes. We want to take a look at stats, right? So inside this object, this data object, we want to go ahead and drill in, and we want to take that, we actually want to get that array of stats, right? So, how do we do that? So as we go back here and we take a look, right? We have, as I said, we've now have this data. We've logged that data. Well, let's go ahead and get to the stats. Anyone here know how to do that?
Dot stats.
Yeah, literally dot stats. So like, boom. All right, and so we save this, we refresh again, and we take a look. And as you can see here in my, here, let me go, sheesh, that's gonna get annoying. Take a look here, and what you see now is that we've now have an array of stats. Okay, now some way, somehow, what we're supposed to do now is we're supposed to go ahead and take all these stats, and we're supposed to display it in a list format. Okay. Now, just for clarification, looking more at, as I said, using promises as an example, how do promises relate to this, right? How do promises relate to the fetch API, all right? What exactly is being used here? So, well, before we get into that, I actually want to go ahead and say a couple things, because what we'll also have to do is we'll have to create a catch method. I think it's dot catch, if I'm not mistaken, to catch an error, and then log that error. But let's go ahead and look at a let's go ahead and sort of, oh, not console log error, come on now. And let's go ahead and take a look at like promises, log, and what exactly are the states behind this. Okay, so when we do a fetch call, right, and as I said, this is like, as I said, it's using promises, right? There are three parts to a promise, like a promise call, or the use of a promise. So there is the pending, right? So anyone here, familiar with promises or whatnot, or even just making calls or using promises in general, there's the pending, success / fulfilled. I call it, like, I just say, like, whether that promise has been fulfilled, and then also the error, or like I think the failure. And so what is it? Pending, fulfilled, and then error or rejected. So a promise, as I said, when it's pending, it's in its initial state, right? So it's not even been fulfilled yet. It's not being rejected. It's currently going through what it needs to go through, right? And then afterwards, what's happening is, we then get either a fulfilled, so meaning that whatever we did was completed successfully. All right, and we see that right here. So whenever we fetch data from this Pokemon API, what we're doing is saying, hey, you know what, it's in its pending state. Well, then, after it's done pending, all right, let's see, do we get a response? If the response was successful, we then go through all of this, right? So we go to then when it is, well, when it's I think when it's fulfilled. I think we can also do it on rejected as well, but I'll have to look at that diagram again. But then if it's fulfilled, then we go ahead and we do something. Okay. All right, and we're exactly doing that. We eventually get to the point where we're able to log out all these stats of the data. But what happens if it's rejected? Well, we use something called the dot catch method. All right, and And the cool part about this is saying, hey, you know what, if this promise or whatever happens, if this right here isn't met, we could say if it won't be met if let's say if I don't know, the server's down or something happens, right? We're in a data is just not there, whatever it is, right? What it'll do is that it'll reject the operation, which then leads us to the dot catch right here, right? This dot catch method. And what we're doing here is we're giving it a parameter of error, and then we're going to log that error. So we'll see exactly what went wrong, okay? And that when you console.log that error, it'll pop up in here. So that's exactly what's happening. Or better yet, we can use console.error. I always should totally start using this more, and it'll actually pop up as red in the console. So if you've never seen that before, if you want to take a look, we do that and it pops up like this, okay? So if y'all see that, you can do that. And the cool part about that too is that I think you can add like text. So like and I think it might pop up, yeah, like this right here. So it'll pop up and it'll actually give you like that, you know, those really cool console errors that you see, or really helpful ones that you see within projects. Is pretty much like what's happening. So this is an error, as you can see, but that's essentially what's happening. So so we have that, and you know, now that we've done that, well, so far, does anyone have any questions? So are you all following along? How are you feeling so far? Good? Yes? No? Maybe so? Okay, well, we're going to move on to the next. I'm assuming everyone's good because no one's saying anything, all right? The next thing that we want to do now is we now have all of this, is that we've now logged all these stats. What we're going to do now is, as I said, just something really simple. We're going to go ahead and create a list and render all the stats. And then also we're going to render the stat name and also the base stat. So if we take a look again at our Pokemon Pokemon stats ditto, as you can see here, there's a base stat, and then we also have inside this object, or inside this this object inside this array, we have the base stat, and then we have stat, and then inside that stat right there, the the name of that, which is HP. Okay. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and say, hey, you know what? We want to render a list. See. So this is where, as I said, we've already done this. I'll bring that up there. All right, so we've fetched the Pokemons, or better yet, we are able to, we drilled into the fetch the Pokemon stats data, so we kind of have that data.stats. And then next up, what we want to do here, actually we'll do this, just bring that up like that. And now we want to display the stats in like the list format. So how are we going to do this? Okay. So anyone here know how do they want to do this at all? Anyone want to lead this real quick? Because if not, I'll totally lead it, but I want to make this fun. Anyone want to say anything? Anyone want to try to like display this data in a list format using our lovely unordered list here that we have? Anyone want to try it? Come on, somebody volunteer as tribute. No one? Okay, I guess I'll be Katniss Everdeen. Okay, so what we'll do now is that what we're gonna do here is that I'm just gonna go ahead and now we could do it inside of our fetch, this right here, but I'm just, as I said, I'm just gonna go ahead and create a variable, a constant variable called list PokeStats, or unordered. You could do unordered list of PokeStats, but just list of PokeStats. I'm then going inside our document, and I'm using the query selector, right? And what I'm able to do here is saying, hey, you know what exactly do I want to select? I want to select anything, or I want to select something that has the class PokeStats. So this. Now we could do document.getQuery by, I think, by class name. That would work. I just enjoy using query selector. That's something I prefer over the years, but this right here would work. Okay, so we now have, we've now selected our unordered list and stored it inside a variable called list pokestats. All right. Next up, what we need to do now is we need to display, as I said, the name and also the base stat inside of our, inside of our URL. So, or sorry, inside of our HTML. Okay. So the way we're going to do that is that we're going to say so list pokestats dot. Now keep in mind, I want to let y'all know that there is a problem with this, but we're going to do this for just simplicity's sake. Inner HTML. Now, red flag. I do not recommend you use inner HTML. There are other ways to display data, but we're going to use this. Okay. And we're saying, hey, you know what? As you can see, we now have the data, right? So we're saying, hey, we want to take that data object, we want to drill into that, we want to drill inside the stats, and then we're going to do something a little bit different here. Okay. So remember, stats is an array. Okay. How can we display, go into each object and display data, or at least manipulate data inside this array, right? So how do we loop through this array? Now we could create a for loop, but what we can do is something even better. And in my opinion, I find it to be a lot simpler. We can use something called .map. Now, who here is familiar with the .map? Anyone here familiar with mapping?
Not really.
Anyone? Anyone at all?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yes. Okay. So what exactly is .map in JavaScript?
Map allows you to iterate over an array and do something. You have like a callback function for each item, and you get to do something. And I'm trying to remember, because some of these functions create essentially like a new instance, and then I believe map actually operates potentially on the original. Is that correct? I know that there's like concerns about like whether you want to create a new
new
whether
array or
it's
something
mutable
like
or
that.
not. Yeah,
I see. Yeah. So I think .map actually creates a new array. The only one that doesn't create a new array is I think it might be, is it reduce? I think it's reduce. I think reduce is the only one. There's .map
Reduce, yeah, definitely affects.
Yeah.
But it's
yeah.
Potentially it's like a different thing though. Like you could like use reduce to like do a sum on like an array of like numbers.
Yes. Yeah. I would typically yep, that would work, as I said. Yep. So here, I just went ahead and pulled up something really quick, and if we take a look here, just as a quick example of map, we have an array, as I said. Inside that array, what we do is that we're saying, hey, you know what? We pass a function to map. So as I said, we have this right here, array. We say, hey, we're gonna create a variable, and what we're gonna do now is we're doing, like as I said, we're doing a .map on this array, and every time or every item inside this array, as I said, every so inside each individual, oh my gosh, I was gonna say indices. So every element in the array, what we're gonna do now is we're going to multiply that by 2. So if we take a look here, if we do an array, so we're taking this array, we're mapping it, and every time, every element inside that array, we're saying, hey, x times 2. So if we take a look at this, 1 times 2, 4 times 2, 9 times 2. 16 times 2. So when we take a look at this and we map this, or we look at this new array that we have, which is in map 1, we console log this, we should get 2, 8, 18, 32, right? Simple enough. Should be good with it, right? Okay. Now let's go ahead and sort of take that same logic and let's do a little something with what we currently have. So what we'll do now is we're gonna call every every element, which would be, I think, inside every, we're going to call each time we loop through or whatnot, or every element or object inside that array, we're just going to give it the name of pokestat. Okay. And what we're going to do now is we're going to create a list item, so li, and I'm using the backtick characters, by the way. And we're going to say, all right, it's cool inside that PokeStat. Now, if we remember, looking here, all right, so we're inside this one right now. We can do a couple things. So we can go ahead and get the base stat and also that HP name. So what we're going to do here is that now we're now inside this object. We can do the PokeStat dot, let's say, base stat. Okay, so we could do PokeStat dot base stat, and then we can do and then we can go and let's go ahead and close that, and let's go ahead and take a look, okay, and see what's happening. So you can see we're getting something, and we're also getting this awkward comma right here, right? Does anyone know? So as I said, we're able to get this, and we're able to see, hey, you know, it looks kind of, as I said, the base stats. So you can see right here, we're getting all that, right? That's cool. It's looping through everything. But we also get this weird comma, and we'll get to that in a moment. We'll get to that in just a moment. All right. Now, before this base stat, we kind of want to go ahead and, like, you know, what exactly is that stat's name, right? So what we're going to do here is that we're going to create another. Let's see here. We're going to go ahead and display another variable, and we're going to go inside PokeStat, and we're going to go inside stat, that stat object, and we're going to grab the name. Okay. So now when we refresh this, we should see HP, attack, defense, special attack, special defenses, and speed. And we see everything, but we still get that awkward comma. Now, does anyone know how to solve this, and anyone knows exactly what's happening? Anyone? Okay, well, let me go ahead and show you the solution, and then I'll explain the solution. All right. So we're going to use .join right here, and that will solve this issue right here. Okay, and the reason why is because when we take an array, which is what we had, and two-string it. So as I said, we're actually like two-stringing this array, and we're displaying it, as you can see here. It'll join it with commas. So in order for us to fix that, we have to use the .join and empty empty quotes right here to explicitly fix that. All right, and so this is why we don't see I said any commas anymore. As I said, we've cleaned it up a bit. All right, now that's cool and all, but let's go ahead and go into something a little bit else. As I said, I know we're we're at 3 o'clock, but let me go into something else, and we're gonna go into async await real quick. Okay, this will be a nice quick lecture, something really nice. Let's go into this real quick. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and paste some code that I had from the other file, and in fact, we can go inside this finished file. And let's go ahead and copy and paste all of that code here. All right. I'm going to uncomment it, and then we're gonna, as I said, we're gonna take a look at this real quick, and I'm gonna comment this out too. All right. So how exactly does async await work? Is anyone here familiar with async await? Anyone know how it works at all? If not, I'm gonna go ahead and dive into this. Is anyone here familiar with async await?
You gotta use async at the beginning of the function, and that creates an async function that's looking for a promise, and then, well, it's looking for a promise at the specific part that you put await at.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So the cool part about the await part is that it makes JavaScript wait until that promise settles, right, and returns its result. So you know, the cool part about this is that you know, sometimes, and in fact, I remember I encountered this, you know, with having to fetch, you know, doing like this fetch or whatever, like this, you know, trying to get data and display it all, right. I was getting like a large amount, a lot of data for like this dashboard. Ended up having to you know, convert my, you know, my promises, or like like all the data I was fetching or whatever, like all the data I was getting, into actually async await, right? Is because sometimes whenever we're building on applications, we kind of don't want things to move on to the next, you know, as we fetch data, you know, if data is dependent upon like something else, we kind of don't want it to like move to the next phase or continue moving until the data that we, you know, that it's relying upon is finished, right? And so what it allows us to do is that it allows us to make that code that we have sort of like a little bit more. As I said, we're able to work with that a little bit more. So what exactly is happening here? All right. So if you look inside, we have a function called Austin is cool, because I think I'm all right. Okay, could be something else, could be Clint is cool or Joe is cool, but I decided to use my name. All right. So we have a function called Austin is cool, right? It returns a new promise, and inside that new promise is what we have here is that we're resolving something or whatnot. As I said, we're setting a timeout, and this timeout is I think what it's taking. So that's 2,000 milliseconds, 2 seconds, and it's resolving to I'm way too cool. All right. So what will happen is that it will set a timeout. It'll wait 2 seconds, and then it will boop display I am way too cool. All right. Now what exactly is happening inside this async? So I'm saying, hey, you know what? There's an important message. Create an async function called important message. We call it down here, right? So what's happening is that we've created this function, we've called this asynchronous function, and we've created a message called, hey, well, we've created a variable called my message, and it's saying, hey, you know what? We want to wait until this block of code is done. All right. And what are we waiting on? We're waiting on this function to resolve. Okay, and that function is Austin is cool, right? As we can see here, we've created a promise, and we set a timeout. And so what'll happen is it'll wait 2 seconds, and then what it'll do is it will then log the hey my message from Austin, and it will display what was resolved, or the results of what was from like the my message function. Okay. So does everyone here get that? Do you have any questions? And cool people use template literals. Yes, totally true. Okay, now but I love template literals, man. Those are amazing. And if you aren't familiar with what template literals are, those are the whole backtick stuff we were using. And that's on the top. It's like is it like the tilde key? Is it? I think it is. Top left, right under the escape. It's called tilde. I think so. Yeah. So just out of curiosity, you're probably wondering, like, Austin, like why would I use async over just regular, just why would I use async await? Well, the cool part about async await is that it'll actually show. In fact, the benefits of this actually becomes a lot more evident when there are multiple steps involved. Okay, so initially, if we're using just one step, that's not too bad, right? But let's say if we have multiple functions, right? Austin is cool. Let's say Clint, and then let's say Aaron. That's how you spell your name, right, Aaron? I think so. Yes, should be.
Yeah, that's it.
All right, gotcha. And also Joe. All right. So the cool part about this is this is where things get a little bit more interesting, right? And so let's say my message. I'll just call it and we'll go ahead and remove this. My message 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Let's see here. I know I know it's definitely not dry code, but that's all right. And then Joe is cool, right? This looks a lot cleaner and just logs out to be a lot nicer, in my opinion, than on the contrary. Then I guess other options. So we can console .log. Let's just say backtick. My message 1, 2. You would get the idea. We're able to log all of that, right? And so it becomes a lot cleaner. Now there are other ways for us to be able to make this even more cleaner, right? With this whole we're awaiting, right? As I said, this is still like redundant code. Now, granted, yes, this is redundant as well, but there's ways for us to make it even more cleaner. Okay. So instead of having to wait for this, wait for that, then wait for this, go to the next one, wait for this, go to the next one, wait for this, go to the next one, and so. What we're able to do here is what we can do is we can actually go ahead and simplify this. And I'm going to go ahead and let me go ahead and make this a little bit nicer. We can create a variable, and we're going to create an array of variables, and I'm going to say my message 1, my message 2, my message 3, and my message 4. Okay, so my message 1, 2, 3, 4, and what we're going to do here is we're going to await, and then we're going to use something called promise dot all. Okay, and what we can do here is we can then define inside this an array of saying, hey, you know what? What I'm going to do here is I'm going to define. I want to wait until this is done. All right, we're going to use Clint is cool. You know, Aaron is cool. And Joe is cool. All right. And the cool part about this is that promise.all returns an array with like whatever of all the, you know, pretty much of all the resolved values that we have here. Once all the passed in promises, pretty much everything that was been passed in, so all these promises that we have passed in have been resolved. Okay. Now we could one-liner this, but I like making things a little bit more readable. But this is another way, as I said, for us to be able to, this is where things get a lot, you know, just a lot cleaner, in my opinion. And as I said, async await is very useful when you want to block your code of saying, hey, don't move on to this until, like, you know, this is done. Okay. And so, you know, you have to wait until this is done, and then let's go ahead and move on to the next. Okay. So, but as I said, async await is very useful. It becomes even more useful when we have multiple calls involved. Promises in general are something really nice to look at. And yeah, as I said, overall, it is definitely something you really want to know, you want to be familiar with, and you know, and try to better understand a lot of the different methods that that you can use with promises. Okay. You, Calvin Harris. Okay. And so, as I said, look into this. As I said, these all settled, and that was something I absolutely loved. All settled. Oh yeah, it's finally here, huh? Any, catch, finally. We'll look into finally. What exactly is, you know, difference between finally and dot then? Promise dot race. What's the difference between promise dot race versus promise dot all or all settled? Reject, resolve. Like, what exactly are these? I recommend you look into these, play around with them, and yeah, as I said, hopefully everyone here enjoyed the enjoyed it. So enjoy this little demo of promises. All right, and as a to go, as a finishing something is something to leave y'all with. I actually had a couple. If you look inside the finished folder, you'll see that I have some to-dos. Now I went ahead and pasted it here, but there are some to-dos inside the finished our finished inside our finished scripts tag. So you'll see that, hey, what are some to-dos to make this project a little bit, you know, a little bit more fun, right? So everything from refactor the fetch fetch call to use, like, you know, try using, like, see if you can use async await with it. Is it possible? Can you actually use async await, right? Should you use async await? Build a better UI to present the data. So you know, that was cool that we had a list, but can we build a better UI to present that data? Create a form that calls the API after a user submits a Pokemon name. You can do that, or better yet, you can make it reactive. So every time they type something, you can then have it just call the API. But there might be some problems with that, right? Can you create something that'll say, hey, you know what? Even though you just type something, you're gonna have to wait, like, let's say 2 seconds. You know, before I even make a, well, you can still type, right? But it won't, like, register every single type. It'll only register after, like, every 2 seconds. So if you type in, let's say, ditto or something like that, right? Instead of calling it after DITTO, it'll say, you know, all right, cool. After we've made one call, we're gonna wait 2 seconds, and then we're gonna make another call. So you can totally do that. You know, next, what you could do as well, as I said, forward, display the Pokemon in an image. So, you know, an image tag. So display an image of the Pokemon, essentially. Okay. Find another one, which is a very important one. Find an alternative to inner HTML, and also understand the implications on why, you know, what are the, you know, why should you not use inner HTML, right? So refactor our how we're displaying our data. As you can see here, we're using there we go. we're using inner HTML, what are some alternatives that we can use, right? Because it's not all sunshine and rainbows of inner HTML. Major bonus: add the collection add the collection on the page every time a user makes a call. So add to the collection. So what you can do here is that after you make a call to like a let's say you get Ditto, or you get something else. Let's say you get like, I don't know, Charmander, right? So you can actually click have an add button, and then what it'll do is that it'll add it to like your collection on the page, right? So every time you search something else, it'll then like go ahead and you essentially won't be clearing the page. So every time you add it to like this list, it could be like your favorite Pokemon's list or whatever, it'll just be a list, and you can go ahead and search for something else and continue to add it. What'll make it even better is if you're able to use local storage to store that. Every time you refresh, you should not have a as I said, you should actually still retain that data. That's an even major bonus. Another thing that you can do as well is create a delete button, or a remove button. So every time you've added something to like your list, well, remove it as well too, right? So have that ability to do that. And also create a clear button, because if you're just like, yo, all right, I kind of don't really care about my list anymore, I just want to clear it, wipe it clean. Do that. So there are plentiful amount of things that you can do to improve, or at least build on top of this very simple example throughout the week to improve your skills, and also ways for you to look into some promises. So again, yeah, that concludes this, and I hope everyone enjoyed.
Thanks a lot, Austin. It was